and Childhelp have declared a call to action to minimize the number of children who become victims of abuse. Tell us about the call to action and how can Americans help?
Well, as we're getting back to school, I mean, we're reading too many stories about what's happening in our schools, what's happening to our children, what happened a couple of years ago with the whole Sandusky issue there at Penn State. But this is happening across the country. As kids go back to school, Childhelp has a back-to-school program. They have a Be Safe initiative calling on Aaron's Law to be passed in every state in this country that would require, in fact, the curriculum at schools to, in fact, teach kids about being safe, and those type of things also work with the teachers in the schools. You know, so many people really have no concept about how many kids are abused, you know, every single year. Just to give you an idea, every 10 seconds, there is a call made about a child being abused. 5 children die every single day because of child abuse. 400,000 children will be taken out of their homes this year because of neglect and abuse. It is the scourge in America, and it's the least talked about issue in America. We talk about always helping the children, but we seem to always be helping the adults.
Now, many victims are understandably very private about the abuse that they've suffered, but you've been very open about your story in very general terms. Can you share with us how you became a victim?
Well, interesting enough, I've been very vocal about it since 1987 when I wrote my book On the Outside Looking In, but I was sexually abused, you know, when I was 8 years old by a day camp counselor, Don Havlick, what's his name? He died about 7 years ago, and he had taken naked photographs of me as an 8-year-old child and had me, in fact, develop the photographs when I almost was turning 9 and put his hand on my shoulder and said, you know, wouldn't your mother like to have a copy of this? And I will tell you, that day of my life absolutely ended. I had no life after that. Thought I was going to hell, didn't know if people would see me as gay or heterosexual. I was dealing with all of those things. My dad ran for governor, my dad ran for president. I knew there were photographs out there. And finally, in 1987, I wrote a book called On the Outside Looking In, where for the first time, I talked about being sexually abused and dealt with all of the issues of that. And if you think about the fact that 42 million children will go to bed tonight without a father in the home, we are raising children today by sending them to someone else to be raised, day camp counselors, whatever it might be. But as parents, we're so busy, we've forgotten to raise our own children, and somehow we're wanting to trust all those who we put our children in their care, and sometimes we need to be careful.
And this was a secret that you kept from your famous family for decades, finally revealing, as you said to your father and First Lady Nancy Reagan in 1987, I guess when you were working on the book. This was the same year that your father gave one of his famous Cold War speeches. Why, after so long, did you decide to speak up and go public?
We all do. I would ask anybody right now, anybody watching this show, I want you to go in, grab out a piece of paper, and write down on a piece of paper something you don't want anybody to know. And then put that into an envelope. And the next time you see somebody on the street, just hand them the envelope and have them read it. You're not going to do that. The most horrific thing that can happen to a child is to be abused, sexually, physically, or whatever. All your self-esteem absolutely disappears out of your life, and you're afraid. You're fearful of saying something to someone because you're fearful of how they will see you, how they will interpret it. Remember, the person who's sexually abused believes they are not the victim, that they, in fact, are somehow guilty of what's gone on. I mean, if you can think back to when I was 16 years of age, not knowing if I'm heterosexual or homosexual, how you're going to view me in life. I started buying prostitutes downtown Los Angeles when I was 16 with money I stole from my dad's wallet to prove to myself that I was heterosexual. It is a horrific problem that we in fact have. What happens to us? We turn into alcoholics. We turn into drug abusers. 60% of us turn into abusers ourselves, sexual abusers. That's what happens to children who've been sexually abused, male or female. 1 in 5 girls, 1 in 7 boys are sexually abused in this country. So when you walk into an event, or right now, people watching this show, 20% of them have been sexually abused or are going through it right now. And they're not telling anybody because it's the worst thing that can happen to you.
Michael, when you shared your story with your father, what was his reaction? And also, how is it that you were able to beat the odds?
Well, I don't know if I beat the odds. I'm still standing. Probably because I've forced my way through it, is what I've done. And I think my therapy comes by helping other people. I think you're always in self-therapy. I think the best thing I did was actually write a book about it, because I think in a book you're more honest with how things happen than maybe just verbalizing it. So I wrote the book also later on, Twice Adopted, that you talked about, introducing me into this show. My father reacted. He said, listen, I'll go out and kick the guy's butt. And Nancy said, honey, I don't think he has a butt anymore. But when Don Havlick died at 83 years of age about 7 years ago, his sister-in-law wrote me a letter and said he was as evil the day he died as the day he sexually molested me. And I can finally be rest assured the photographs have finally been destroyed. Now think about that. Photographs taken in 1953, 1954 were not destroyed till 7 years ago, because these people use them as trading cards in their lives. And just think about a young child who, me for example, who is sexually molested, photographs are taken of you naked. You're made to develop the photograph, and then he says, wouldn't your mother like to have a copy? Who would you tell? Who in the world would you tell? You are scared to death that in fact your parents are going to disown you, they're going to throw you out and get rid of you, that you have done something terribly, terribly, terribly wrong. My sister, when she read the book On the Outside Looking In, she said, now I know why you don't like green anymore. Because the dark room he had in his apartment had a green tinge to it, and so green was just the scariest color in the world to me. I was 5th grade, I went through twice, junior in high school twice, dropped out of college. I had no direction because I was fearful of being a success, because I worried that if I became more successful, the photographs would come out and destroy my life and possibly even destroy the career of my father, who was running for governor or running for president of the United States of America.
Recently, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie signed legislation that bars therapists from helping children overcome unwanted same-sex attractions, including minors whose same-sex attractions arise from childhood sexual abuse from pedophiles. How do you view this move by Chris Christie?
I wish he would have talked to me on this, because that last point that you made, here's what happens, and I talk to churches about this on a regular basis. The church, when you go to church, and this is one of the reasons you don't tell, you are taught that if you're homosexual, you're going to hell. That's what you learn going to church. And so why would I tell somebody a male touched me if you're going to see me as homosexual? And my parents see me as homosexual and think I'm going to hell. That's the era of the time that I, in fact, grew up. So how many children does the church and do other people chase into the homosexual community because you find a safe haven there? Because if it's ever found out you were sexually molested or were with another person of your same sex, they will embrace you. Where the fear is, if it's found out in the heterosexual community, they will ostracize you and kick you out. So there's a lot of children who are in the homosexual community that are there because it's a safe haven to them, having been sexually abused. And they're the ones that truly, in fact, need to have some help. So to opt them out of the situation, to me, is not the right thing to do.
Do you think that federal lawmakers are turning a blind eye to the problem? And what can Congress do?
Well, the fact is, I mean, yeah, they do to an extent. They still ask the same question, why didn't you tell somebody what happened to you? Because there are a bunch of old fogies sitting on Capitol Hill that really don't get it. I'll give you an idea. Sex trafficking in this country is monumental. There's 100,000 children in America who are recruited into sex trafficking right now as you and I speak. It is a $12 billion a year industry. There are 200 beds in the United States of America for young girls or boys who have been recruited outside the United States, brought into the United States, for sex trafficking. If they're arrested, there's 200 beds for them to fill. After that, they go to jail. There are no beds in the United States and no money in the United States for American children who are recruited into sex trafficking. No beds, no money at all. It's like America doesn't want to talk about it because to talk about it means we have to accept it. But just to give you an idea, Within 48 hours of your child running away from home, whatever the reason is, they're being sexually abused, they're just kids are mad at their parents, within 48 hours, they are recruited into the sex trafficking trade in the United States of America. It is horrific what's going on in that industry. Again, Congress talks about it, but doesn't do very much about it.
Michael, if folks want to learn more about Childhelp, where can they go?
They can go to childhelp.org, which is a great website to go to. If they're having trouble, they can call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. That's the number 4, the letter A child, 1-800-4-A-CHILD, and get more information.